Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time once again for this continuing journey we call Living Hope. A weekly show designed to provide hope, inspiration, and education for those living with pancreatic cancer. Sharing the real life stories of those really affected by this deadly disease and how they deal with it on a daily basis. With a woman, she's been around dealing with it for a while. Roberta Luna. Welcome back to Roberta.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a little while, 23 years. I think that's just a little bit.
A little bit. You might know a thing or two. Well, the thing or two we're going to learn today is there is hope.
Yes,
You guys keep telling me there's so little hope and all these awful statistics and everything else here. Boy, we've had a lot of hope over the last few shows here. Hope of maybe some treatments, hope of research, and today, hope that maybe your diagnosis will change.
Definitely, and this being November, being Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, we wanted to instill some hope, a lot of hope. So today we are having Nick Pifani. He's a husband, father, marathon runner, and a pancreatic cancer survivor. Diagnosed in 2017 with stage 3 inoperable pancreatic cancer, Nick's journey from inoperable to no evidence of disease is one of determination, faith, and hope. Nick uses his experience to inspire and advocate for others. Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you and to hear your inspiring story. Is just a great way to kick off the November Awareness Month for pancreatic cancer. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, Roberta, and it's always great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. And it's been a while, so it's nice to see you. We talked about this a little bit off air, but since we're looking at the poster behind you, because that was something that you said that really struck with me as well. What is that poster behind you? What does it say?
Yeah, so it's a poster of Steve Prefontaine. He was an iconic middle distance runner in the U.S., and one of his famous quotes was, "To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift." Steve has been one of my idols since I was a kid, big runner, and I would say the day after I got diagnosed, I put that up on my wall in my office to make sure I had a reminder every day, make sure I gave my best.
And thank you for doing that, because I think just, having you on the Survivor Council, I see what you do, and I do agree. You give it your 100% best, so thank you for all you do. Take us back to the day of diagnosis. What were the first, or maybe even before that, what were the first signs that something wasn't right, and how did you ultimately get that diagnosis of pancreatic cancer?
Yeah, sure, Roberta. So what I would tell you is I knew something was not quite right. A few months, I got diagnosed, I ended up in the ER in March, and that was only because a few months back, I just noticed I was having some GI distress, and things just didn't seem quite right. So I called the family doctor and said, I think I need to see a GI specialist. Could you recommend a few doctors? And made some phone calls. It was a 4 to 6 month wait. My symptoms continued to get worse to the point where I didn't even really realize it at first, but I had lost about 8 to 10 pounds really without trying. I mean, I'm a runner, so sometimes like you fluctuate a few pounds here or there. But I noticed it was difficult to eat. I was getting stomach pain more and more, lots of GI distress. And, what really sent me to the hospital was intense back pain. It got so bad at night, I was getting up 3-4 times in the middle of the night, getting a hot shower just to kind of dull the pain and trying to get back to sleep. So, essentially a restless weekend sent me to the ER to kind of figure out what was going on, because I just couldn't wait another month or so to get to the specialist.
And what type of test did they do on you to get that diagnosis?
Yeah, sure. So first, they did an ultrasound. They thought maybe it was something with my gallbladder, and nothing really showed up there. And then they ran a CT scan, and I remember the moment pretty vividly, as I was like watching a international soccer match, and the doctor walked into the little ER room and he turned the TV off, and I said to him, I was like, "Wow, must be pretty bad, huh?" And he was a young guy, and I just laughed and I just said, "It's okay, just tell me what's going on." And he just said, "We see a sizable mass on the head of your pancreas." and it needs more study. And I said, so do I have pancreatic cancer? He said, I really can't tell you that. You need to have an MRI. So I chose to get discharged, and I went through the family doctor, had an MRI the next day, and I got the call the following morning. I guess it was before 7:30 in the morning. So when your family doctor calls you before operating hours, you know that it's not great news. And at that point, I knew I had pancreatic cancer, and then I had to start, you know, my journey began to start finding my medical team and who that was going to be, and you know what it would look like.
How did you do the research to find your medical team? Because it is really important to have a team that you have 100% confidence in.
Yeah, so I when I came home that night, I called my brother and sister and I called my dad. And I just told them what was going on, and I just said that it doesn't look great. And if you Google the symptoms, it's like everything I'm experiencing. I said, so I won't know until another test. Um, but I wanted to get him prepared. And I started researching, and then I came across a surgeon, Dr. Charlie O, who was a byproduct of Johns Hopkins and chief of surgery over at Thomas Jefferson, and I kept seeing his name over and over and over again. So he went right to the top of the list because everything I read about said, like, for a successful outcome, you need surgery. In addition to that, I started telling some close friends and some family what was going on, and one of them had experience with a stepfather being ill with pancreatic cancer, and mentioned some great teams over at Fox Chase Cancer Center, and they helped me get an appointment, which was amazing. So some recommendations and some independent research, kind of sparked me to get, a handful of opinions pretty quick.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little choked up there because I'm just going back and remembering, that those phone calls to family members and telling them what's going on. How did you handle that, and how did they handle the response to that?
It's funny you say that because if you ask my family and friends, they would tell you I was the one telling them that it would be okay. Kind of thinking back to it, it was tough. Um, but I had at that time, I guess, God, my kids were like 7 and 9 at that time. So, we didn't tell the kids until right before we knew what we were going to do for a course of action. Um, and that was probably the hardest. Um, but I was just honest, to be on, to be frank. Like, I told them what was going on. I didn't want them to find out via social media or someone else. We also told, like, everybody we live in a small town. My wife's a teacher. My kids go to school in the district, right? So we told everybody in hope that, you'd get the support. And, I think we certainly got that. And I knew if I needed to be positive, because if my kids didn't see the positivity, then, and my wife didn't see it, it would be challenging for them. So I needed to be, you know, I coached little league sports and a lot of different sports for a while, and no matter if it was recreational or if it was a travel sport, I would tell them the same thing, which is you should always show up knowing that you have the opportunity to win. Now, it doesn't mean that winning is like you have to win, but you need to have the attitude that you have to win. So I just, tried to embrace that. And I would tell you, as like a runner, for a large portion of my life, um, it trains you to have a level of mental toughness that I don't think a lot of people have, and to be able to endure and endure. People think it's a physical toughness. It's not. It's a mental toughness. You have to learn to overcome, and you have to learn how to tell your body to keep going, when it's tired. And, your brain tells you how to do that. So I think I really embraced that.
Yeah, and I get the running because I was not a runner, but I did actually do two half marathons after diagnosis, and it is really a mindset and trying to get over that hump or that hill. So, running does have. I'm only half crazy. I'm not going to do a full marathon, but I think Paul has a question for you.
I just got to interject and ask the question that I always wonder. So many people, including Roberta, talk about a positive attitude, a tough attitude, a not a fake attitude, not a fairy tale, nothing's wrong attitude, but a mental toughness to this. I'm going to do everything I can in my power to battle this. We had a doctor on, I forgot which. I mentioned this before. I think he was in North Carolina somewhere. It runs a clinic, and he said, "I can't prove it changes the outcome, but I won't touch a patient that doesn't have that. If you're not fully committed and fully believing that you can battle this, then he doesn't even want to start the battle." How important is that? I guess that's my question, because I read about people all the time. It doesn't guarantee success just because you have a positive attitude, but it seems that if you have a negative attitude to this whole thing, it sort of makes it more difficult to recover or make it through this. That's my impression. So I'm just you both say it's really important. How so?
Paul, I think it's critical, to be blunt. And I'll tell you what I told my father at the time when I got diagnosed, because he was very upset. And I told him, I said, "Dad, people have been telling me no my entire life, but somehow like it's a motivating factor for me, and I continue to just not accept no." And that was the attitude here, is that um, it's no different. It's just, another hurdle that's in the way, another obstacle that's in the way. And I'm not everybody else. I'm not like, they show statistics and different things. I always looked at it as I was going to create my own statistic, because I just believe that I believed I had a team. I believed in myself. I believed in my medical team. My medical team believed in me, right? And that was a critical part of, I needed to make sure that the doctors that were treating me worked just as hard as I did. Because if they didn't, then it was time to find somebody new. Because if I knew I was putting in all that effort, I needed to make sure that I saw the reciprocation of that.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you because I know my medical team works very hard, so that makes me want to work even just as hard because they put in so many hours, and they're really in it 100% plus. So I do agree with you. I think it's very important. I read where you often call Jennifer the love of your life. And how did your family, Jennifer, the kids, and even your dog Jersey, which I think is a cute name considering where you live, help you through all this?
Yeah, so I mean, I would just say that, you know, you talk about like a positive attitude being critical, and I know I use that word, but I would tell you, like, I believe family became critical, right, in success as well. Um, you know, I will tell you personally, I've lost a lot of loved ones to cancer. Um, Being a patient is much easier than being a supporter, I will just say. So,
That's what
you know
Roberta
what?
said numerous times. That's another one. I shake my head and say, "How is it harder to?" I guess it's harder to just be on the sidelines watching than it is because
You
there's
have no
nothing you
control.
can do. Yeah.
Yeah, you have no control, Paul. That's exactly right. And like, unfortunately, I have a type A personality, unfortunately or fortunately, so I like to be in the driver's seat. And it's tough to do that, right, when you watch a loved one. But, my wife did it really well. Um, you know, um, it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you don't know what the future holds. Let alone like 10 years from now, we're talking like weeks or months, right? Like that's not an easy thing to do. So, family was extremely important. And I look at it as like they were a differentiator, in the battle. And, our dogs were the same thing, right? Always like by your side and by you during, when when you lay down on the couch, when you get up, when you walk to the kitchen, etc. We lost one of the dogs a couple months back, and Jersey's still with us, but our other dog, she was like by my side the entire battle. So
Yeah, it's difficult. I had my lab pit mix that was with me the whole time I was sick and right there, and it was difficult when I lost her because she was one of my supports. She was with me all day when everybody was at work and at school. So it is very difficult. And I think we're probably a lot alike, which I didn't realize with the personalities. I've been, instead of being called, I think I'm a control engineer is what I've been told. So I think, and I do agree, being the caregiver for my parents, my mom and my dad, was much, much tougher than being the patient survivor. So, I found myself actually apologizing to people when I had to tell them that I had pancreatic cancer because of their reaction. I felt like, I felt bad because I was having to give them that bad news. But, so what helped you make it through the treatment? Because I know did you do chemo and radiation before you had the Whipple?
I did. So, I was not a surgical candidate. The tumor was surrounding the superior mesenteric artery and vein. They found out that I had a genetic mutation. Um, we did that work beforehand because unfortunately I discovered I had a first cousin that had gotten diagnosed about 6 weeks before me. So we put two and two together. I got a platinum-based chemo, endured as much as I could for about 6 to 7 treatments, and then we did targeted radiation. Chemotherapy was really difficult. It was challenging. It just, I was telling somebody else, like outside of when you get the steroids in the beginning before your treatment, once you get connected, it takes about 40 minutes for your personality to just disappear. When you go through a lot of the treatment, it's tough, but I ran a lot during treatment as much as possible. I just focused on one down, how many more I need to have to get through to go, right? I did notice, like, as I went through treatments, that the pain was getting better and I got off the pain medication. I would tell you that targeted radiation was, for me, much easier. I actually went back to work because I needed to be busy. And as I would explain to my boss, I'm like, look, I can only cut the grass once a week and I run every single day. You got to put me to work. I need something to do. And, I tolerated it, quite well. But the chemo was, wow, that was just something that I just never, I just would never know how difficult that was. But it was, my body just did not like it. And I use the analogy all the time. It's like, you feel like Superman when you're out running, and then all of a sudden, like, the kryptonite came and you felt like Clark Kent. Yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. The chemo is really, really difficult, and I think some doctors tried to prepare you, but I don't really think they can, for one reason, because they probably haven't been through it. But yeah, the chemo can be the killer, unfortunately, and it's very, very difficult. How did you learn, or what was it like when you got that phone call that told you that now there was a possibility to have the surgery?
Yeah, so I'll never forget it because, I ended up making a phone call to my dad telling him the good news, but my wife and I went to see Dr. Yo in his office, and I think we were both prepared that we prepared ourselves for the worst. And we walked in the office, and he had just said to us, well, you did everything we asked you to do, right? Aggressive treatment, etc. And I think the way he said it was, I've seen worse than scans, and things have gotten a little better. So, he just said, we're going to give it a go. We're going to get you on the books, in a month. And frankly, like, we were probably in a bit of disbelief because that that day was the day that things, like, just changed. Because when I looked at my treatments, the goal was to get to the surgical table, because I knew if I got to the surgical table, I had the best doctor possible, right? And that if it was meant to be, it was going to be meant to be, right? And so at that point, I probably felt like for the first time I had an upper hand on the diagnosis, because now I was a surgical candidate.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like. You must have went out and just celebrated and screamed to the world that it was happening. And Paul has a question. So
So, who took it upon themselves to review this? They had made a diagnosis that the cancer was inoperable. Uh, Do they? I guess I'm trying to understand what prompted somebody to look at it again. Was that you asking them to look? Was it their team going back and looking at it? Who decided? Hey, we need to. Things have changed. We can get operated on this.
Yeah, sure, Paul. So, I did my treatments at a different location. They offered, the surgeon wanted me to come back. He told me, like, get your treatment, come back and see me and bring your scans. So I had my scans. The treatment team wanted to review them with me. I wasn't interested in doing that, and I told them it was like not to be disrespectful. It's just there's only one person that's going to operate on me, and his opinion is the only one that matters, because like if you tell me one thing and then all of a sudden he tells me something else, then I have to explain that, right? So I think the plan all along was to take a look at the scans again after I finished treatment. The question really was going to be, you know, would we see enough improvement where they would be able to operate? And in my case, fortunately, the answer was yes.
And that goes to the other question that I want to ask. What if you get conflicting opinions? What if, because you're going to see different people, and one guy says yes, one guy says no. One guy says I can operate, one guy says I can't. One guy says this is inoperable, one person says it's not. I would think that happens a lot. Is it, how, we don't know. How do you decide who's right and who's wrong?
Well, for me, Paul, it was really simple. I I loved Dr. Yo the first second I met him. I had just an unbelievable amount of trust in him. So when he told me no, in the beginning I knew it was no, and he explained to me why. When that's why I knew I was going back to him, because he was the only person I trusted to do the surgery if it was possible. So I knew all along his opinion was the only one that was going to matter. So that's why my wife and I waited for him to review it to make the determination of if it was a yes or if it would be a no.
So what was it like when you walked out of his office and he told you now surgery was possible? I mean, did you believe it, or were you still kind of hesitant, or were you 100% gung ho, let's do this?
It was the moment I was waiting for, because all the stories I've read, it was if you can get yourself to the surgical table and you can get it done, you have a chance at a long term, right? So that was always the goal. So for me, again, that was like the turning point. I thought to myself, all right, I got a chance, right? I have a real chance now. And I would tell, like, 2 nights before the surgery, I saw a bunch of my friends and they just said, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding? I'm gonna have the best night's sleep ever." And they would just laugh at me and they're like, "I don't know how you could say that." And I just say, I have like the most gifted surgeon on the planet working on me. So if it's not meant to work out and it's not meant to be, well, I know I did everything in my power, right, to get myself to this point. I left nothing on the table, right? So I felt really good about everything that I did to get myself to that point. And now the rest was up to him. I mean, getting up to that point, the surgeon told me, he just said, like, look, crank your mileage up. Make sure your body is in like the best shape possible before, you come in. I mean, I ran the night before, because I knew it was going to be 8 weeks until I was going to be able to run again after the surgery. So, I had a lot of faith in him, and that made the decision really easy.
And as we come to the end here, give us the happy news. How did it turn out?
Yeah, sure. So, after, an 11-hour surgery, and I was on the expedited route, on the last day when I got discharged on day 5, he came in and told me that, like, the great news from the pathology was negative margins, no sign of cancer. He even went as far to say that when he went inside and he removed it, he said he could tell the cancer was dead. It basically fried itself right between the radiation and everything else. So, he told me, look, this type of cancer comes back a lot, so where there's going to be a lot of surveillance, et cetera. But, at that point, that was like the best outcome. That was what we were hoping for, and that's exactly what we got.
And how long ago was this?
Well, that was in October of in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So a while ago.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
And before we do that, we just want to ask, for someone listening today who's feeling scared or overwhelmed, what would you say to them?
Well, I would tell them that they should contact pancan.org, right? There are a lot of wonderful resources that are out there. I would tell them that they should be hopeful, because there's an army of survivors. There's a lot of challenging things, right, when you read them alone on the internet. You always hear about the bad stories. It's a difficult disease, but there are lots of people that are not only surviving, but they're thriving. They're doing great. I mean, today I still run a lot. I ride my bike a lot. I work full time. Most people, they would never, if they saw me on the street, they would have no idea I survived stage 3 pancreatic cancer. So why couldn't you survive it? That's what I would tell them.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for bringing us hope on this November Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month.
Absolutely. What an inspiring story here. What determination. And a great outcome.
And you're giving me hope for after 23 years, still waiting for that phone call. So thank you so much for doing that and for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for having me today.
Sure. As Long as You Speak My Name, I Shall Live Forever is dedicated to Representative Sam Rayburn, the 43rd Speaker of the House of Representatives, died of pancreatic cancer in 1961 at the age of 79. The Rayburn House Office building on Capitol Hill was later named in his honor.
Well, there you have it. Even with stage 3 pancreatic cancer, there's still hope. We're going to bring you that hope and the latest information, ideas, and strategies to find the right team and give it all you got. We hope you'll give this to somebody who needs to hear it. And we hope you'll come back and hear more. As we continue this journey we call Living Hope, right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. And if there's more help that you need or more help you need, we mentioned it before, go check out patient services at PanCan. That's the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. And they can be reached at 877, the number 2, PANCAN. That's 877-2-PANCAN for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. As I said, I'm Paul Roberts for the OC Talk Radio Network, hoping you'll come back and join us again on this journey.